plain and simple, I know you guys want to know the best ways to get athletic or increase your sports performance. Well, today I'm going to be making a tier list of the different training styles and exercise selections that you guys need to consider if you want to get athletic. Check this out. Getting straight into it, first off, we have bodybuilding. So, this is kind of a controversial take, but I'll probably put this in the B tier. I really think that in some cases it can be beneficial. More muscle mass is always welcome in sports, and especially the muscle endurance capacities that some bodybuilders have. Especially if you're training anything over 10 reps, you're really going to have a lot of muscle endurance compared to power lifters or even plyometrics. So I'll be putting bodybuilding training in the B tier for its effects on athleticism and sport performance. Um, Again, in any type of program, there's always room for more muscle, and it's important to have a well-rounded program that includes multiple styles of training. All right, now next up, this is kind of a niche, maybe smaller training style, but they do claim it has profound effects on sport performance. Next up, fascia training. Some of you may know it as hyper arch fascia training, but really this is kind of more of like a pseudoscience, I would dare say, um, because they do say the fascia holds memory of exercise, and they train that to try and, I guess, track movements and kind of download movements, almost like a computer. Um, when fascia really, all it does is kind of hold the muscle into shape. I'm not sure, with the research that I've done, that I can really see the benefit of fascia training. Obviously, it's important to to do things like foam rolling or to do things like that, but I'm not really sure if I could see the fact that your feet through fascia will connect to your glutes, and like across your body, your right hip will connect to your left shoulder. A lot of these claims, they make crazy claims that the fascia connects the entire body in like a whole network, and sure, that's a real thing, but it's more of the nervous system than anything. I don't think the fascia has anything to do with that. Because of these reasons, I'm actually going to put fascia training in the C tier. I think you'd be better off doing things like plyometrics or isometrics or pretty much most other things. Even bodybuilding. I think bodybuilding could be more important than fascia training for athletes. Next up, we actually have powerlifting training. So for powerlifting, you're usually working in low reps, extremely high weight, and essentially the end goal is to have the highest either total or one rep max for a squat, bench, or deadlift. So, I mean, maximal strength is very important for sports, but it's more about rate of force development and generating power. When you're powerlifting, sure, it's a very, very difficult movement to lift such heavy weights, but I mean, in sport, you're never really lifting weight that slow. Even for football players, if you're an offense or defensive lineman, you're lifting a lot of weight, but you have to do it within a split second. The ball is snapped, and you maybe have a half a second before you got to lift, a 250-pound man off of you. So it's more about rate of force development when it comes to sports, or again, back to bodybuilding, it comes with, muscle endurance. So for powerlifting training, I'm going to have to probably put it in the C tier just because it makes people really stiff, slow, blocky, even more so than bodybuilding. If you train bodybuilding the right way, you can still be smooth, movable, pliable, flexible, all things that are important for athletics, as well as having muscle endurance. As a powerlifter, you never really see that muscle endurance side of things. Next up, here's a heavy hitter. Now we're moving towards the top of the rankings. Isometrics. Um, these are just incredibly important for athletes. Just to start off, the tendon strength, tendon thickness is very, very important for injury prevention. Numerous athletes, like over the years, pull tendons, pull muscles, tear muscles, and you know the tendons really can grow from isometrics. Studies show that the cross-sectional thickness of a tendon can grow after just a few weeks of isometrics. And again, it's kind of hard to program because they can be pretty fatiguing, but if you program the right, I think they're really an S tier exercise. And not to mention that studies actually showed that isometrics help tendons be more elastic. And in sports, I was talking about the rate of force development, and if your tendons are elastic, that's going to help you with incredibly with that. You're thinking about basketball players doing isometrics for their Achilles is so important because the second they hit the ground, they can generate enough force and enough elasticity to get off the ground again. Every time they're shuffling, jumping to block a shot, jumping to shoot their own shot, their tendons need to be elastic to allow them to propel themselves off the floor. When an athlete's going for a dunk or even jumping for a jump shot, it's only a little bit of muscle that's being used. It's mainly the elasticity of the tendons. That's why I'm putting isometrics in the S tier. All right, now next up, we have Olympic weightlifting. So this consists of snatches, clean and jerks, as well as the cleans. Um, and this is kind of, a debated topic, but some people say that they are, a must-have in sport performance training programs. But me personally, I don't really like it that much. It's such a technical sport, such technical lifts that it's really hard for, the average football player to do them at a high level. Sure, in college you'll see athletes, cleaning and snatching, but they're never doing it well. It's very, rare that you see in a college weight room that everybody is good form or even most of them have good form. These lifts are just too technical to master, without direct coaching or really, really good athletes. So actually, I do power clean still, but if you start them at the hip or even a very high hang clean, it kind of takes most of the technical aspects out of it. So then it kind of goes straight to just power development. I say this a lot, but if you overcomplicate something, it kind of goes backwards and reverts its progress. Adding complex lifts like the clean and jerk, and snatch into your program, you're kind of almost adding another sport to your program. Strength and conditioning should be to make you better at your main sport. You shouldn't be adding sports in to try and get better at this. I get that, you can say bodybuilding's a sport, and I rank that in the B tier, but it's really not as intense as Olympic weightlifting. Still, for the hip extension and, the power generation, I'm still going to put it in the A tier, but it's a very one-dimensional sport as well. You can't generate rotational power. There's no pressing, really. There's nothing that, can really help football players or even boxers, kickboxers, in anything other than hip extension. It's still A tier, but when the only thing you have to offer is hip extension, then it's gonna knock it down a few points. And I honestly would say that I would borderline put it on B tier, but I don't know. It's still just a little bit better than bodybuilding. The one you guys have all been waiting for, plyometrics. This is pretty much the consensus best way to train athletes for sport performance. And so this is an instant S tier for me. This is great for your tendons, muscles, nervous system, pretty much everything. And even non-athletes should be programming plyometrics just for the benefits in, power and, overall agility and athleticism. As you even are aging, getting to 60, 70, 80 years old, doing plyometrics in the years leading up will, pay off dividends for you. This is, pretty simple. There's not really much to talk about. All around, just great. Pretty simple, clear cut, dry. Plyometrics are the best thing for athletes. And now next, you may notice why there's no, D ranking. So I actually scrolled down. It's actually so bad I didn't even want it on the screen. We have functional patterns and GOTA training. So first off, functional patterns. I don't really know where to start. Both of these are more like cults opposing each other and, opposing everybody in the fitness space. They kind of are more like, you can't train any other way. You have to do it this way, which is kind of ridiculous. You need a variety of exercises to actually, get stuff done as an athlete. And it's very important to, mix things up. You can't just stick to one training modality. it's never going to work. You need variety. But, functional patterns, essentially training, I don't know what they train. They train like fancy, exercises so connect your whole body, with spiraling and rotational patterns, and like, I really don't understand. There's not really any scientific basis at all. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Next, GOATA stands for a lot of different things. One of the common acronym definitions that I've found is greatest of all time athletes. And I guess that comes from the fact that they've studied, some of the greatest athletes of all time and learned their movement patterns, and they're trying to replicate it themselves. They've studied, mainly Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Tom Brady, athletes of that caliber, and they try and copy the way they move and implement that into exercise. They also use like a lot of animals in nature to try and exercise and copy their movement patterns, which is kind of strange, but again, it's more like a cult than anything. I do kind of understand their basis. They want to copy some of the best athletes to try and make themselves as athletic as them, but it really just doesn't work out. Everybody moves different, is built different, is born with different bone structures, muscles, insertions. So it really just does not work. You're not going to have the same muscle insertions as Michael Jordan, or tendon lengths, or anything for that matter. There's so many little intricacies in everybody's human body that it's really hard to just copy these people and think it'll work. So really, both GOATA and functional patterns are just kind of ridiculous training cults. Again, it's important to train with variety, and I will say I have done some of their exercises very on a very small scale. But I mean, you cannot make this your training modality, your main training, stance. It just does not work. There's no proven benefits, there's no proven basis, and it's just a training cult, trying to get money out of people. So with that, thank you guys for watching, and that wraps it up. And if you want to learn how I program all of these different training modalities and all of these different exercises into my own training, drop a comment, check the link out in the bio, and maybe I can set up a program, similar to what I do, using all these exercises for you. Thank you for watching.